Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin, the weekly chat show where conversations about race are never off the table. We're your hosts, Quaviondre Williams.
And Daquon Wilson.
Now, let's get into this week's conversation. What's hot on the table this week?
So recently, the International Olympic Committee decided to allow 15-year-old Russian skater Kamila Valieva to skate after it was revealed that she failed a drug test for TMZ, a drug that can increase stamina and blood flow to the heart. Many athletes called out the unfair nature of allowing Valieva to continue competing in the Olympics, especially after Valieva and the Russian team already won a gold medal, including sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson, who was banned from the Tokyo Olympic Games after testing positive for marijuana. In a tweet, Richardson wrote, quote, "Can we get a solid answer on the difference of her situation and mine's? My mother died and I can't run. And I was also favored to place top 3. The only difference I see is I'm a black young lady." End quote. Valieva's team defended her, explaining that she may have accidentally come into contact with trace amounts of the drug because her grandfather takes it. According to IOC member Dennis Oswald, Valieva's age was also considered as a part of their decision, stating, quote, "The main element was if the athlete was to be suspended, the athlete would not be able to participate in the games and the damage to her career would be irreparable, whereas the medal can always be withdrawn," end quote. So, Andre, that begs the question, do you think the Richardson's accusation of racism on the Olympics part is founded?
So, before I give my answer, I want to say first that Richardson's punishment was handed out by the United States Anti-Doping Agency officials, not by the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. And Valieva's case is still ongoing. Russian doping authorities were responsible for Valieva's current lack of punishment. The IOC has appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport for judgment. And the CAS allowed Valieva to continue to skate, but both the CAS and the IOC have left open the possibility that Valieva will be retroactively banned and any medals awarded will be stripped, as reported by Jay Busby on Yahoo Sports. And with all that being said, I still agree that Richardson's accusation was founded because it opens up a long-standing conversation about racism in sports. I mean, we know for a fact that Black athletes are treated, scored, and punished differently than their white counterparts. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've seen it time and time again throughout the history of sports. In an article written by Colin Seal, he cites 3 specific examples of racism within the sports industry. The first example, Simone Biles, had her historic achievement diminished by the International Gymnastics Federation when she created a move so complex that the judges awarded her a J on the International A to I scale of difficulty. As a result, the International Gymnastics Federation, the FIG, updated their ranking system. Even though no one in the world aside from her can do the move, FIG reassigned the move a difficulty rating of H. They justified this by claiming that her move carries increased risk for gymnasts, including a potential of landing on the neck. Now, I don't know about you, Daquon, but every gymnast move I've seen looks like it can result on landing on your neck. I don't...
Absolutely death-defying.
And now another incident too that Seal brings up is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and other gifted athletes in that field. The NCAA banned dunks from 1967 to 1977, citing safety concerns and damaged equipment as their reasoning. But Seal points out that it was mighty funny how this ban was instituted during Kareem's dominance, leading UCLA to a 30-0 season in a national championship. In the last incident, that Seal discusses is in regard to Rich Paul, an agent to National Basketball Association superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And Paul has negotiated over $625 million in contract deals. Yet this did not stop the NCAA from creating a certification process for agents that required them to have a bachelor's degree. That was later rescinded after observers noted it as the Rich Paul rule because Paul obtained his tremendous success despite not earning a bachelor's degree. So while this specific circumstance with Richardson's versus Valieva can be argued from a lens outside of race, what Sha'Carri brings to light is a long-standing issue in the industry as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I think in regards to the Valieva Richardson kind of argument, I think that it's very important, even though I fully recognize that these are two completely different circumstances and there's
Exactly.
different factors in play. I do think that it is important to recognize different instances of racism in sports because it really informs us
Yes.
of Richardson's mindset. Because I think of it like if you are conditioned to see racism everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to continue to see things that trigger that thought in your mind that there is racism. And we
Exactly.
see so many instances of racism in sports, especially at the Olympics. For example, even in when Richardson was banned from the Olympic Games because she tested positive for marijuana, that same year there were Olympians who had marijuana businesses
Mm-hmm.
that were promoted. And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of contrast, I know, had to hurt her, as well as all of the racist remarks, frankly, that she was met with after
Yeah.
it came out. Because I think that gets to when Richardson was saying in a later tweet how she was like, after it came out that she tested positive for marijuana, they slandered her name. So
Mm-hmm.
many people were sending her so many different racist remarks and everything like that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
again, that informs how she thinks about this situation, as well as, other Olympians like Simone Biles, who also received racist remarks after she withdrew from the Olympic Games for her mental health. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's another important part in this conversation, thinking about mental health, because I noticed that in this instance, there is a lot of sympathy for Valieva's mental health, that,
Yes.
a lot of this can be very damaging to her and her career and her mental health because, frankly, if you are a 15-year-old and every single news outlet is calling you like the girl who got away with doping at the Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
that can create some type of damage, some type of trauma. Yet the same isn't allowed or afforded to Black athletes in the same way. So I do think that when thinking about Richardson's claims, you have to understand the perspective that she holds as a Black woman who has faced racism in sports in general.
I fully agree. I think that there is a lack of empathy, a lack of sympathy. And I think it also begs that kind of really problematic idea of the strong Black woman.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, in society, Black women are not given the space to be vulnerable, not given the space to be able to release that pain that they're going through because the world tells them, well, suck it up or be better or be stronger or be you just gotta keep fighting. And at some
Right.
point, everybody has a breaking point. And I think that, while Sha'Carri is older and they kept using that as the excuse and stuff like that too, I also think that the fact is she lost her mom. And
Right.
the fact that there was not that same the fact that the issue was more with her using the drug versus why she did it. In this case, it was the reverse, where Valieva, it was talking about why she might have gotten the drug or what might have been going on versus, she took a drug. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that same space of vulnerability, that same discussion is not given. That same allowance is not given to African American people, specifically African American women. And this is also not the first time that the Olympics have made it very clear that Black people and people of color are not welcome and have used their rules as a cover for their racism. I mean, in an article written by Caroline Kitchener, we learned that for many years there was only one kind of swim cap. It was ultra tight, made of latex or silicone, and it was considered a one size fits all. But those swim caps left out a large group of swimmers, adding to the structural inequalities that often keep people of color out of the pool. Many swimmers have celebrated recent advancements in swim cap technology. Several brands like Soul Cap have introduced options that were more flexible in their material and that vary in size, accommodating swimmers with hair that is larger and more textured than their white counterparts. But Soul Cap submitted their product to the International Swimming Federation, FINA, for approval, but they denied that request. And the organization said that the design does not fit the natural form of the head. And to the best of their knowledge, the athletes competing at the international events never use nor require caps of such size and configuration. So I just wanted to ask, like, this sounds a lot like gatekeeping to me, Daquon. What about you?
It sure does. And I think that this gets at a larger question of really redefining or creating new rules for the
Yeah.
Olympics. We have to figure the Olympics is one of the largest competitive stages in the world. You have all of these countries sending their best elite athletes to
Mm-hmm.
compete in all different types of sports. And we have certain rules that are in place that can create barriers and also unfair advantages for certain groups of people. And I
Exactly.
think in this case, we are seeing a unfair advantage for younger Olympians because I know that there's some rule about because Valieva is 15, she cannot be held accountable in the same way that older athletes are held accountable.
Like
And I
Richardson,
think
yeah.
there are conversations about getting this rule out. And I think that this should be a wake up call for the Olympics to really reconsider all of the different rules and make sure that we are creating an equitable field for everyone.
I fully agree. I think that, like you just said, we're still using a rule book that was created by racist, misogynistic white men who never considered the thoughts and feelings of people of color or Black people when creating these rules. Until these rules, until these rules include people that look like us making the decisions, we will always run into these kind of issues. I think there needs to be a panel or open forum of discussion with people of various racial backgrounds to reevaluate whether or not these rules and regulations in place ostracize a certain group of people for whatever reason. And if those rules are found to be in breach of inclusion, then those rules need to be modified or taken out altogether. I think that we're
Right.
still playing this game with a deck that was already stacked against us.
Hmm. Just like many other things that were stacked against us.
And I think
So
there's
I completely agree that we need new rules.
exactly. And I think there was a fence metaphor. I don't know about that. You know about that, Daquan?
Yeah. So in the fence metaphor, there's this idea of like a baseball game in the fence. And
Mm-hmm.
so we think of equality as everybody gets the same thing. But if somebody's like 6'4", they can already see above the fence without even needing a box. But if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's like 4'5", even with the box, they may still have trouble seeing over the fence. That's
Mm-hmm.
just equality. Equity would be everybody getting what they need individually. So that 6'4" person may not get a box, but the 4'5" person would get an even higher box than
Mm-hmm.
what they would normally get if it's just equal across the board. But the true thing that we should be fighting for is justice. And that's reconsidering why is there offense in the first place? So I really agree with your point of just like thinking about creating a committee to reevaluate the rules, figure out why were these put into place for the first place, and are these creating unnecessary barriers for athletes in the Olympics?
Exactly.